Okay, I wanted to answer this question. It's a long scenario. I think it's very important to read that information because you can sort of see how the whole situation evolves. And you got this carryover from sort of a degradation of behavior that the school did not respond quick enough to, which is not, it is not unusual because there's so many school districts that starting about February, they want to kick the can. It's just easier to kick the can to next school year instead of putting things into place. And I'll even do that depending on where we are at the end of the school year. For example, the beginning of May, I find it absolutely a waste of resources to bring a behavior analyst in, third-party behavior analyst, pay them to start doing an FBA in May, being that in August, we're looking at a different classroom, different teacher, different set of circumstances. And at that point, if there's other things that we could do during the summertime to where, let's say the behavior analyst does an ABLS or an AFLS assessment, gets to know the student, and then works with them prior to the beginning of the new school year. Let's say it's a transition situation in a new school, getting them acclimated, then what I'm doing is I'm getting the behavior analyst familiar with the student and the student familiar with the behavior analyst so that we can sit there and really hit it hard and do what we need to do at the beginning of the new school year. In your situation, you were already having those problems and then the can was kicked. So then you have the veteran teacher that retired. Now you have a new teacher that took over, and the new teacher doesn't know your son. Your new teacher has not been trained on this plan, if there is even a plan, because if there are problems at the end of the last school year, sort of indicative that the plan isn't working, that something else is going on, and therefore a new FBA needs to be done. Unfortunately, FBAs take some time, and you don't want to do them in the first couple of weeks of school because this is traditionally what we call the honeymoon period, to where you don't necessarily get good results, not only from the teachers because it's new for them, but then also the students, and everybody sort of needs to get into a routine. At that point, that's when you do a good FBA. This happened the first day of school. Now at that point, yes, it's an emergency situation, and you sit there and you go, well, they suspended my son. Well, that's not necessarily a good sign of what's to come. And at that point, yes, you've got to be vigilant and you've got to be aware, and yes, you did the right thing in communicating with people, and yes, the assistant principal and the principal by and large are going to be completely ignorant of this law because they're not required to know it. They're just sort of I don't even know, depending on the state, if they're required to know anything. They cause a lot of due process cases because of their lack of understanding in these areas and their misapplication or their misinterpretation or their general ignorance of disability-related behaviors like you stated in this situation. So what do? Well, you need to get a new FBA. You need to have an ethical, good behavior analyst come in and do those observations and create a good behavior plan. You sit there and you say, well, my district refuses to use one. Well, the law doesn't require them to. But, well, there's cases out there right now that sort of are an opposing thought to what I'm about to say. But that's relegated somewhere else in the country and not necessarily applicable to Georgia right now. But after they're done with their own, if they refuse to use a behavior analyst, then you would have a right as an independent evaluation to get an independent review, and at that point choose, let's say, a behavior analyst. But you need to have an FBA done. The law doesn't require that it has to be a certain profession, unfortunately, because we're still using 2004 IDEA special education law. It has not yet been updated. And we have learned a lot since 2004 with regards to behavior and the science and the expertise behind that. But we're still applying the standard from 2004. So that's what we're stuck in. So it doesn't have to be that professional, and that's why a lot of schools end up screwing up, is they use internal people, and they even use the child's own teacher, not realizing that the teacher themselves could be the antecedent, could be a contributing factor to the child's behavior, and the teacher's unable to see it because they're the ones doing the observation for the FBA. Can they suspend your child? Yes, they can suspend your child. They don't even have to give you a reason for suspending your child for up to 10 days. Guys, and you sit there and you go, well, what about my child's special education? Your child can be suspended for up to 10 days without any kind of reason or justification. Okay? That's what the law requires. At the 10th day, then yes, it becomes what's considered a change in placement. They have to do a manifestation determination. Why is that? Because your child's IEP was developed to be implemented in certain locations within the school. And if your child is not in those locations, like out of school suspension or a lot of in-school suspensions, then at that point you see where it screws up the IEP team's designing of that IEP of what a FAPE is. Because according to the IEP team, of which you as a parent is a member, we design this IEP to be implemented in these environments. And if the child is removed from those environments, then the IEP is not being implemented as designed, and the IEP is supposed to be designed and reasonably calculated to provide your child with free, appropriate public education. So you see where that becomes the problem. But the law allows for up to 10 days without any reason. Okay? Now, if your child has been in school suspended multiple times, well, in-school suspension isn't counted against those 10 days, guys. Not in-school suspensions, only out-of-school suspensions. Alternative school for, over 10 days. Those would be. In-school suspensions are not counted toward those 10 days. At the same time, there is something called patterns of disciplinary removals within the law. And what that is it's an analysis that if they are removing your child from their learning environment an excessive amount of time, or if it creates a pattern and the behavior that your child's being sent to in-school suspension for, or being denied access to things, silent lunch, no snacks, those kind of things are all punitive actions that could infringe upon your child's equal access and also services. If there's a repetitive nature to it, for the similar or same types of behaviors, and if it happens over a short period of time, then it creates what's called a pattern. And if it's a pattern that you can connect, then at that point, then it should send off red flags that they're not implementing your child's IEP, that the behavior plan, if your child has one, is not working, and that they need to get on the ball to do something about it. Many times they won't do anything about it, and they'll keep your kid in this revolving door and this cycle. And you need to be mindful of that. You need to take action before it festers and rots and gets really nasty and toxic. Because these things don't correct themselves. These behavior things don't correct themselves. Because human emotion is involved now. People get offended by your child's behavior. Your child starts getting a bad stigma. Those kind of things. So, in other programming issues, you can sit there and tweak it. Oh, that's not working. This isn't working. Oh, they're getting frustrated with me. They're calling me a helicopter parent. That's a different situation. If your child's stuck in these cycles of discipline issues, then guys, there's not a lot of wiggle room for you as a parent to do something about it. Otherwise you start seeing this rapid decline, and it's really hard to change people's perception about your child. Even though it was the inaction of the adults, it was the inaction of the team to put the right scientifically proven methods and approaches in place, and it was wrong of the IEP team for not developing a skill acquisition behavior reduction program to where we're teaching skills at the same time of reducing those behaviors through skill acquisition. All right? So you got to take action about it. And that includes early removals. If they're early removing your child, having you come up to pick them up and not notating it as a suspension, not notating it anywhere, then guys are trying to circumvent the law of those 10 days. They're just having you come and pick your child up, and there's no documentation of it. Don't allow that to happen. Understand that your child is being removed from their learning environment. Therefore, that IEP that was developed to be implemented in those environments can't be implemented. Therefore, denying your child a free, appropriate public education. You must take action.